What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be breaking down some of the new info and images that came out recently about the upcoming game called Star Wars Hunters. Now, this game hasn't been advertised a whole lot just yet, so if you're not too sure what this game actually is, it's a new mobile and Nintendo Switch game confirmed to be soft launching in Q4 this year, which is essentially within the next couple of months, and then a proper launch at some point in 2022, likely earlier on in the year. Because of the fact that it is on the Switch as well, that does mean it will likely be of a slightly higher quality than your typical mobile game, and there has been a lot of rumors and speculation about the fact that it could eventually be ported to console as well. So I know most people probably aren't all that keen on mobile games, and I'm right there with you. I'm more into that sort of fleshed out console and PC gaming side of things, but this game does look to have a lot of upside, which I'm really excited about, in the fact that it could end up being a lot better than the typical mobile games that we all know. Now anyway, just last week on the same day that the KOTOR remake was announced, there were actually a few new images released for Star Wars Hunters, and it's technically our first look at the game, because all we'd really seen before this was that 30-second teaser trailer, and that didn't really show anything at all. So technically this is our first proper look at the game, even though it's obviously just images and not actual gameplay. The exciting part is though that this was found on an advertisement for the game on Facebook and Instagram, which is only visible in Australia as far as I know, and so that does hint at the soft launch for the game this year being in Australia and most likely New Zealand as well, using us as essentially the beta testers for the game, and then hopefully early next year there'll be the proper launch of the game where everyone else can get their hands on it as well. So anyway, today I just wanted to take a deep dive into these images that were released last week, and apologies for the quality, they're not all that great just because they were taken from an ad. There are actually a couple that look to be gameplay screenshots, and then we've also got some info on the characters. So let's go through these in order, and I'm going to sort of just pick apart each little aspect of the images. Starting off, we have just a couple of key art images. These are pretty much what will be the icon for the game on the App Store and stuff like that, and so we get our first proper look at some of the renders of the characters. Personally, I actually really like the art style. It's obviously very cartoony, and I've seen a lot of people comparing it to Fortnite, which is actually pretty funny, but I do actually kind of like it, and honestly, I think it looks a hell of a lot better than what I initially expected it to. Now, the first image we saw was from one of the ads that I mentioned, and as far as I can tell, comparing this to some of the other images that we're going to see in a second, this is just from a trailer or something. I don't think this is actual gameplay because the UI and the HUD and everything aren't all there, and so honestly, there's not all that much to go through on this screen other than the characters. The character all the way over on the left is a droideka, obviously. However, on the little image below, it does look like that's an Ugnaught, and there is an Ugnaught that we see later on called Slingshot, so perhaps he kind of drives the droideka like a vehicle or something. I have no idea, maybe the image is just wrong, but it is obviously just impossible to tell as of right now. We then have a bounty hunter by the name of Amara Vex. Next to her we have a Sith by the name of Reeve, and you can actually see the Sith Eternal logo tattooed on her head, and then over to the right we have a stormtrooper by the name of Sentinel. Now on the other team there's a Jawa over on the left called Utuni, and funnily enough this is actually two Jawas standing on top of each other. There's then a Wookiee by the name of Groz, a Jedi who is actually a droid, and his name is literally just Jedi but spelled like J-3D1, like a typical droid name, which I thought was pretty funny. And then there is Zayna over on the right as well. So that's really all there is to look at in this image. Now in this next image you can actually see most of those characters' names that I mentioned, and this is where I pulled those from, but there is actually another character here called Skora, who is a Rodian obviously, and so that's yet another confirmed hunter, which does hint that there could actually be more than the ones that we just see throughout these images, so I thought that was pretty interesting. This image seems to be a pre-game screen where it's kind of showing your team against the enemy's team and stuff like that, and then obviously over on the right we can see Groz as well, and I must say he looks pretty awesome. Now the next image is our first look at some actual gameplay, which is pretty exciting, and it seems to be an actual third-person shooter, which to be honest I was not expecting at all. I honestly thought this was going to be something similar to Galaxy of Heroes or something, where it's a bit more of like an overhead view or some sort of like higher angle or something like that, but this does look more exciting to me, so I'm definitely pretty keen to see how it plays. We're seeing the player playing as Sentinel here, and he's obviously shooting at Groz, who looks super intimidating, just storming towards him, and it looks like this is set on Hoth just because of the snow as well as the AT-AT legs over in the top right corner, but the most interesting part of this image is the HUD overlay. Down the bottom we have what I'd imagine is a health bar for Sentinel, and then above that is something that's charging up at 26%, and judging by most hero shooters out there like Apex and Overwatch for example, this seems to be like an ultimate ability, so obviously each character will have their own abilities, although for right now it is pretty hard to tell what that actually is. We then have 4 buttons over on the right, and keep in mind this is obviously the mobile version as well, so those will be touch buttons, but the Switch version might not actually have those buttons taking up as much real estate on the screen, which is great for any Switch players out there. The first button has some sort of downward arrow and then a blaster bolt or something going through it, so I'm not too too sure what that is. The next button looks like it could be a shield ability similar to the personal shield for the heavy in Battlefront 2. The next button looks like it's possibly an ability where Sentinel does like a sweeping spray with his blaster, since it has the blaster moving in a circular motion. And then the top button, which is grayed out, meaning he likely just used it and it's recharging, is possibly a jump button, as it has the character jumping with an upwards arrow as well. Obviously take these descriptions with a grain of salt. Not only are the images super low res, but I also have absolutely no clue what half of these could be looking at just a small icon. So I'm definitely keen to find out more about what these could mean. Now lastly, there is also a section up the top with the score. It's impossible to know what mode this would be, so I'm not too sure what the 9% is referring to. And then over on the right there is like a mute button, an info button, and maybe a chat or a menu button as well. Now the next image is once again a gameplay screenshot, and this one is from the perspective of Amara Vex. Now Sentinel had 225 HP in the last one, and Amara has 200 here, so obviously different characters will be more or less tanky than each other. I'd imagine the characters like Sentinel and Groz the Wookiee will probably be tankier, and then like the Jawas and stuff will probably be weaker in terms of health. And then I'd imagine with Amara Vex being at exactly 200, they're probably right in the middle. There's obviously a different icon on the ultimate ability, which looks like some sort of rockets, and the first button also has a rocket as well, which looks like it will shoot over the shoulder from that shoulder mounted rocket there. The next button has a grapple hook, which is interesting. That could be for movement, or for anyone who's played Overwatch, that could actually be a grapple similar to Roadhog that kind of grabs enemies and then drags them towards you or something. So we're definitely just going to have to wait and see how that plays out. The next button is then another rocket looking ability, but with that sort of target or like a radar looking thing behind it. This could even be like an orbital strike or something like that. And then obviously there is once again the jump button as well. Now the next image shows off what looks to be a winner's screen or an end of round screen or something like that, and we just get to see another look at each of the characters here. And one thing that really stood out to me on this image was the fact that over on the right the Jawas have that like reddish sort of pink outfit, but then on the end screen they've actually got a green outfit with a stormtrooper pauldron and armor and stuff, which essentially confirms the fact that there will be cosmetic items to unlock. And so that's another awesome sign as well, and hopefully that's sort of where they focus the microtransactions rather than making it pay to win. Now the very last image I have here is of a DL-44, which you can see is Zayna's weapon as she's holding it over there on the right, and there's a few interesting things to look at in this one. Firstly, we have what looks to be 3 different types of currencies up the top there, one of which is clearly just like regular credits, and the player has 1 million of them, so I assume they're pretty easy to get. There's then the crystals as well over on the right, and they have 30,000, but you'll notice there's actually a plus sign next to that, which I'd imagine means these are the premium currency, meaning you can buy these with real money. And on the actual skins down the bottom, they only cost 360 crystals, so it's kind of hard to tell how valuable anything is here because they're only 360 per skin, but then the player has 30,000, and so it's really hard to tell, since that could be like $1,000 worth that they own, or it could be only like $10 for those 30,000 crystals, and then like the skins maybe are just really easy to buy, who knows. There is then a third currency over on the left, which actually has Zayna's head as the image with a little credit sign next to it, and that leads me to believe that these are like points or credits that you can only get for each specific character, almost like character progression rather than just being able to use them for anyone. It's really hard to tell what any of these are actually for as of right now, since we have no actual news on the game, and so I'm going to reserve judgment and opinion on the sort of credits and currency type of things until the game is actually out or until we get some news on it, but it is definitely interesting nonetheless. So anyway guys, that is pretty much it for this video. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of actual info out there just yet. Most of this video was honestly just speculation on what these images could be and stuff like that, but with the game soft launching in the land down under within the next couple of months, I'd imagine maybe October or November, I will definitely be keeping you guys updated anytime we get any news, and I'll hopefully actually be able to play it somewhat early because obviously I'm in Australia and it seems like that is where the soft launch will be taking place. So if you guys are interested in Hunters and you want to hear more and even see more before you guys can get the game, then be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so that you don't miss out on any more news. That is going to do it for this one though guys. As always, a massive thank you to my channel members and my patrons for the continued support. If you guys are interested in supporting the channel as well, then be sure to check out the Patreon page that's linked down in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Crush them! Make them suffer!